In 209 BC, an army led by Antiochus III crossed a dry region on its way toward the Parthian heartland. The local ruler, Arsaces, understood that the invaders did not need to be defeated in battle if they could first be defeated by thirst. According to the ancient historian Polybius, men were sent to destroy the hidden water channels along the route. That detail reveals something extraordinary. These channels were important enough to become military targets. They were not rivers visible from a hill, and they were not canals that an enemy could easily follow across the landscape. Most of the water moved underground, inside narrow tunnels cut through earth and rock. On the surface, the system could appear as a line of circular shafts stretching toward the horizon. Beneath those shafts, water flowed silently toward farms, gardens, reservoirs, bathhouses, and settlements. The system is called a canot. It does not create water, and it is not a natural underground river. It intercepts groundwater stored in an aquifer, then guides that water through a gently sloping tunnel until gravity carries it to the surface. Once the water emerges, it can be divided among fields and households without a pump, an engine, or a dam, holding back a great river. Across the arid regions of Iran, canots supported permanent settlement where rainfall alone could not. UNESCO describes them as essential to the formation of desert civilizations, and the Iranian plateau has even been called a landscape of canot civilization. Yet the most dramatic version of the story is often too simple. The canot was not invented in one clearly documented moment. It did not single-handedly create the Persian Empire. And it was never merely a clever tunnel. A working canot required geology, surveying, dangerous labor, legal agreements, communal maintenance, and rules for sharing water that could be more valuable than the land above it. It could shape where a village stood, which crops were planted, how neighborhoods were organized, and whether a state could collect food and taxes from a desert frontier. So the real question is larger than who first dug one. How did an artificial river beneath the ground become a foundation for agriculture, urban life, and political power? And why did a system that survived for centuries begin to lose ground to technologies capable of extracting far more water, far more quickly? How to build a spring. A canot begins where the water cannot be seen. At the edge of a mountain or an alluvial fan, experienced diggers study the slope, vegetation, damp soil, springs, and the shape of the land. Their first task is to locate groundwater high enough above the intended fields that gravity can move it downhill. They sink a deep shaft called the mother well. The name is practical. This is the point from which the canot is born. If the shaft reaches a reliable part of the aquifer, workers can begin a tunnel toward the lower ground where the water will eventually emerge. The tunnel must descend so gently that the water keeps moving without destroying the channel. Too steep, and the flow can erode the floor and collapse the work. Too flat, and sediment can accumulate while the water slows. Historical canot construction depended on minute judgments made without modern laser surveying. The correct gradient might be only a few parts in 1,000. Workers did not excavate the full tunnel from one end. They opened a sequence of narrow vertical shafts along the route. These shafts allowed spoil to be lifted out, fresh air to enter, and crews to reach different parts of the gallery for construction and repair. From above, the excavated earth formed rings around each opening. Aerial photographs can make a canot look like a dotted line drawn across the desert. One below ground, the labor was claustrophobic and dangerous. A typical gallery could be barely high enough for a person to crouch or kneel. Workers faced collapse, bad air, sudden water, and the possibility that months of digging would miss the intended level. The specialists responsible for this work were known in Persian as mekanis. Their knowledge was technical, but it was also inherited through practice: how soil sounded under a tool, how air moved in a shaft, how the line of the tunnel should respond to the slope above. When the gallery reached the lower plane, it opened at the surface. This outlet turned the hidden flow into a visible stream. Channels carried the water to gardens, grain fields, orchards, reservoirs, mills, and homes. The underground section reduced heating and evaporation, but the system's deeper advantage was energy. Gravity performed the transport continuously. A canot therefore behaved like an artificial spring whose source could lie many kilometers away. It was not unlimited. Its flow depended on the aquifer and on recharge from rain and snow. But because the tunnel could only collect water at the level it had been built to reach, it often imposed a physical limit on extraction. The system could fail during prolonged drought, yet it could not simply keep lowering a mechanical pump deeper into a shrinking aquifer. The shafts across the desert. The visible shafts were more than construction scars. They were the maintenance doors of a living machine. Sand entered the tunnel. Sediment gathered. Earthquakes cracked galleries. Roots intruded. Sections collapsed. A canot that was not inspected and repaired would gradually lose its flow. Maintenance created a social problem as important as the engineering problem. The tunnel might cross land owned by many families before reaching fields divided among still more shareholders. The mother well could stand far from the settlement that depended upon it. A collapse beneath one person's property might stop water for everyone downstream. This meant the water system could not survive through individual effort alone. Communities needed workers, money, schedules, access rights, and accepted methods for resolving disputes. UNESCO's World Heritage description emphasizes that traditional communal management allowed water to be shared and distributed in ways that were both equitable and sustainable. The canot was a channel, but it was also an institution. Its scale could be startling. Some systems were only a few hundred meters long. Others extended for many kilometers, with deep mother wells and hundreds of shafts. The UNESCO-listed Persian canot is not one structure, but a series of 11 representative systems spread across several provinces. Together they demonstrate different climates, gradients, depths, lengths, and associated buildings, including reservoirs, mills, and places where workers rested. The best-known example at Ghanabad is associated with a particularly deep active mother well. Modern measurements and popular accounts differ over exact figures for its depth and total length, which is one reason sensational numbers should be treated cautiously. The secure point is that the system demanded an extraordinary command of underground alignment and long-term maintenance. A line of shafts also changed the way territory was understood. On an open plain, the route of the water could be followed even when the water itself was hidden. The line connected mountain recharge zones with lower settlements. Protecting the canot meant protecting the land above its tunnel and the catchment that fed its aquifer. This explains why damaging a canot in war could be devastating. A surface canal might be repaired where the breach was visible. A hidden gallery could fail somewhere beneath kilometers of earth. The loss was not only the day's water. It could threaten crops, force migration, weaken tax revenues, and erase the investment of generations. The system's apparent simplicity, a sloping tunnel and some shafts, hides the real achievement. A canot transformed uncertain groundwater into a predictable social flow. Once that flow began, people could build routines around it. Fields could be planted. Neighborhoods could grow. Contracts could be written. The desert did not become wet, but it became inhabitable in a new and durable way. 2. Who invented the Khanate? For generations, a familiar story credited the Khanate to the Persian world and often linked its invention to the Achaemenid Empire in the 6th century BC. The concentration of Khanates in Iran, their long historical importance there, and their later spread across regions once connected to Persian rule made the argument persuasive. But archaeology has made the origin story less certain. Researchers have identified early underground water systems in southeastern Arabia dating to the Iron Age, roughly between 1000 and 800 BC. Other evidence from southeastern Iran belongs to the first millennium BC, but dating collapsed underground galleries is difficult. Some systems may have begun as short, shallow channels tapping near-surface water before later engineers developed deeper and longer forms. Another theory placed the origin in the kingdom of Urartu, north and west of the Iranian plateau. That argument relied partly on an Assyrian text describing a green settlement without an obvious river. Later scholarship questioned whether the damaged text referred to Khanates at all. The disputed translation is a useful warning: a dramatic origin can rest on one uncertain word. The strongest modern conclusion is therefore cautious. Khanate-like systems may have developed in more than one place, or they may have emerged in one region and spread through contact. Early versions in Oman and Iran were not necessarily identical to the long, deep systems later associated with Persian engineering. The technology may have evolved in stages. The Achaemenids remain central even if they were not the first inventors. Beginning in the 6th century BC, their empire brought vast territories under one administration. Large-scale water development required labor, security, taxation, law, and long-term authority. The state could encourage settlement, reward those who developed water, and extend technical knowledge across regions. Evidence for the exact policies is incomplete, and the surviving sources are uneven. Yet the broader pattern is clear. Persian imperial power and hydraulic development reinforced each other. Water supported agriculture and settlement. Agriculture supported populations, armies, trade, and taxation. The empire provided the stability and coordination needed for large projects. This is where the title must be understood correctly. The Khanate did not suddenly create a civilization in an empty desert. People had farmed, herded, built settlements, and managed surface water in Iran for thousands of years. The Khanate expanded the range of places where those activities could become permanent and productive. It altered the geography of possibility. If you value documentaries that distinguish a powerful historical argument from an easy legend, subscribe and continue with us. The next part of the story is not about digging the tunnel. It is about deciding who owned the water. Once it began to flow. When water became a social contract. A Khanate could not be governed like an ordinary well. The water moved continuously, while demand changed by hour, season, crop, and household. Those closest to the outlet could take more than their share unless the community enforced rules. Those living upstream could damage the channel used downstream. Repairs benefited everyone but were expensive enough to invite avoidance. The solution was to divide water rights, often by time. A shareholder might receive the flow for a defined period before it passed to the next user. The exact system varied from place to place, and rights could become attached to land, inherited, leased, or sold. What mattered was that water had to be measured socially even when it was not measured by volume. This transformed time into property. A field did not merely need access to a canal. It needed a recognized turn. Night. Water could be stored for use during the day. Reservoirs balanced continuous underground flow with irregular human schedules. Mills and bathhouses had to be fitted into the same hydrological order. 3. The rules were not automatically fair. Wealthy landowners could control larger shares. Social hierarchy shaped access. Maintenance obligations could burden poorer users. The word communal should not be confused with equal. In every historical period. But shared dependence placed limits on purely individual action. A Khanate functioned only if enough people accepted that the tunnel beneath them was a common system. This helps explain the durability of water-related law in Iranian history. Under the Sasanian Empire, groundwater and Khanate management received detailed administrative attention. Later Islamic jurists confronted the relationship between inherited Iranian practices and legal principles emphasizing access, fairness, and the special status of water. Rather than replacing one system overnight, communities adapted old institutions to new political and religious frameworks. Around the year 1000, the Persian mathematician and engineer Al-Karaji wrote a remarkable work commonly translated as The Extraction of Hidden Waters. It discussed how to identify groundwater, estimate its depth, dig wells, construct qanats, protect the area around them, and address related legal questions. The book shows that underground water was not only a craft tradition. It had become a subject of systematic scientific thought. A Khanate therefore joined 3 kinds of knowledge. The Mukani knew how to excavate and maintain the tunnel. The community knew how to allocate the flow. Scholars and officials tried to describe the principles in law and writing. Remove any one of these, and the system weakened. The hidden river changed civilization not because it was invisible, but because its invisibility forced people to cooperate with something they could not fully observe. Every user depended on a tunnel extending beyond the boundaries of a single field, house, or lifetime. Cities built above hidden flow. The city of Yazd offers the clearest surviving image of what happens when urban form grows around underground water. Located in the deserts of the central Iranian plateau, Yazd became a city of earthen walls, shaded alleys, wind catchers, sunken courtyards, cisterns, gardens, bathhouses, markets, mosques, synagogues, and Zoroastrian fire temples. Beneath and among these structures ran the Khanate system. UNESCO notes that each traditional district of Yazd was built on a Khanate and organized around a communal center. Water did not simply arrive at the city boundary. It helped define the neighborhood. Cisterns stored drinking water. Access points allowed residents to reach flows below street level. Gardens transformed carefully allocated water into shade, fruit, beauty, and status. The architecture and the hydrology worked together. Thick earthen walls slowed the transfer of heat. Courtyards below ground level reached cooler air. Wind catchers guided breezes through buildings. In some arrangements, moving air interacted with cool underground spaces and water to improve comfort. The city was not air-conditioned by a single invention. It was an environmental system made from soil, airflow, shade, and hidden water. The Khanate also influenced Persian gardens. A garden in an arid landscape was more than decoration. It was evidence that water had been captured, divided, and directed with precision. Straight channels, pools, fruit trees, and enclosed shade expressed both practical irrigation and an ideal of ordered abundance. The same water could pass from drinking supply to garden, bathhouse, field, and mill, depending on local arrangements and concerns about cleanliness. Urban dependence created vulnerability. If the Khanate failed, a district could lose more than irrigation. Property values, Public hygiene, religious institutions, and daily domestic life were affected. Repairing the system required access beneath occupied land and coordination among users who might disagree over cost. Yet that dependence also generated continuity. Qanats, cisterns, endowments, and neighborhood organizations became part of the city's social memory. Water infrastructure was supported not only by government but through local institutions and charitable foundations. A reservoir or qanat share could be endowed for public benefit. For this is why the underground river changed culture as well as agriculture. It influenced the shape of streets, the depth of courtyards, the placement of gardens, the schedule of work, and the meaning of generosity. In a dry city, providing water was an architectural act, an economic act, and a moral act at the same time. The qanat made the desert city possible, but it also made the city responsible for a landscape far beyond its walls. The urban fountain depended on mountain snow, aquifer recharge, protected shafts, skilled workers, and farmers whose fields lay along the same system. The empire beneath the empire. From the air, a qanat line can resemble a chain of craters. On an imperial map, however, those lines represented something larger, islands of settlement linked across territory that would otherwise support far fewer permanent communities. The Persian empires were not built only in desert. They controlled river valleys, mountains, fertile plains, and coastal regions. It would be inaccurate to claim that every province depended upon qanats. But across arid and semi-arid zones, groundwater channels increased agricultural reliability and made strategic routes easier to sustain. A settled farming community produced more than food. It could maintain roads, host travelers, pay taxes, supply armies, and support markets. Qanat water could help turn seasonal occupation into permanent settlement. Once a village became stable, the state gained a point of administration in a difficult landscape. This relationship worked in both directions. Empires could protect qanats, regulate disputes, and mobilize resources for repairs. They could also neglect or destroy them. War damaged tunnels and disrupted maintenance. Political collapse could leave a community without the labor or authority needed to restore a failed section. The disappearance of water infrastructure could become both a cause and a symptom of regional decline. Polybius' account of the Parthian campaign captures this strategic value. The underground channels along the invasion route were part of the military geography. Control the water, and the desert itself became a weapon. Protect the water, and an army could cross land that appeared empty. Later Sasanian rulers treated water administration as a source of state strength. Agricultural expansion increased revenue, population, and political stability. When wars, disease, internal conflict, and declining attention to infrastructure weakened the empire, food production and tax income also suffered. Water was never the only cause of political success or collapse, but it connected environmental capacity to government power. The qanat's influence extended beyond borders through migration, conquest, trade, and technical exchange. Related systems appeared under different names from the Arabian Peninsula and Afghanistan to North Africa and parts of the Mediterranean world. Not every underground channel was a direct Persian export, and similar solutions may have developed independently. Still, the broad distribution shows how well the principle answered a recurring problem: how to move groundwater across dry land without continuous mechanical energy. An empire is usually represented by palaces, armies, inscriptions, and roads. The qanat offers another image. Beneath the visible empire was a second network made of gradients, shafts, repair crews, and negotiated turns of water. It lacked monuments at its center, yet it helped sustain the people who built and paid for monuments above. Why the system survived? Qanats endured because their operating principle was conservative. They used gravity rather than fuel. Their underground galleries limited direct exposure to heat and evaporation. Their flow usually changed gradually rather than switching on and off with a machine. Their users developed rules because cooperation was not optional. But durability should not be romanticized. Qanats demanded constant labor. A deep collapse could kill workers or bankrupt shareholders. Water quality could be damaged. Population growth could exceed the available flow. Drought could reduce recharge. A poorly managed system could produce conflict as easily as cooperation. 5. Their survival over centuries came from adaptation. Tunnels were extended, branches added, reservoirs rebuilt, rights renegotiated, and older systems restored after war or abandonment. New dynasties inherited infrastructure created under previous political orders. The technology remained useful even when language, religion, and government changed around it. Scientific knowledge also evolved. By the Islamic Golden Age, scholars such as Al-Karaji were treating groundwater as a field that could be observed and reasoned about. His work considered signs of hidden water, the geometry of wells and channels, and the need to protect the zone around a qanat from interference. The old craft entered written science without ceasing to be a craft. The system could also be integrated with other technologies. Qanat water filled cisterns and supplied mills. It irrigated gardens and supported ice making and storage in some desert settlements. Wind catchers and underground rooms used the cool conditions below ground. Each addition increased the value of the original channel. The longest-lived qanats were therefore not isolated inventions. They belonged to technological ensembles. A tunnel without a distribution network was incomplete. A reservoir without agreed water rights could become a point of conflict. A garden without maintenance would soon disappear. The whole system depended on institutions that could reproduce both skill and trust. UNESCO's 11 listed qanats remain active water carriers. Their continued function is part of their heritage value. They are not ruins preserved only for viewing. Their authenticity lies partly in the fact that communities still maintain, manage, and use them. That living status makes them difficult to protect. A monument can be fenced. A qanat crosses working land, draws from a living aquifer, and serves people with present needs. Conservation cannot mean freezing the system in the past. It must keep the water flowing while preserving the knowledge and landscape that make the flow possible. When the deep well arrived, the modern challenge to the qanat was not that people forgot how gravity worked. It was that pumps changed the balance of power underground. A deep mechanical well can extract large quantities of water quickly. It can be controlled by one owner. It does not require a tunnel crossing many properties or a community schedule dividing continuous flow. For expanding agriculture, growing cities, and governments seeking rapid development, pumped groundwater appeared more flexible and productive. Compared with the qanat, the private well also reduced the need for negotiation. That convenience carried a hidden cost. A pump could lower the water table beneath neighboring qanats. As the aquifer fell, a gallery built to intercept water at an older level stopped flowing. The owner of the pump gained water immediately while the losses were distributed across other users and the future. Research on Iranian water history describes this competition directly. Qanats struggled against deep pumped wells that were cheaper to operate privately and more powerful in extraction. Uncontrolled pumping, weak recharge, and Unsustainable management contributed to drying wells and springs, reduced flows, salinity, higher pumping costs, ecological damage, and land subsidence. The Cannet had once limited extraction through its geometry. A pump broke that limit. It could reach deeper, then deeper again, creating the impression that scarcity had been solved when it had only been postponed. This does not mean ancient technology can simply replace modern supply. Cannets cannot provide enough water for every large contemporary city, industry, or agricultural policy. Restoring a collapsed system without protecting its aquifer is pointless. Climate change, population growth, and altered land use create pressures ancient communities never faced at today's scale. 6. The historical lesson is institutional rather than nostalgic. The Cannet linked extraction to recharge, users to one another, and present consumption to maintenance. Modern wells often separated those relationships. The technology became more powerful while the social mechanism for limiting use became weaker. Some communities continue to restore cannets because they remain useful for farming, drinking water, and cultural identity. International organizations recognize them as heritage and as examples of adaptation to arid conditions. Yet, a restored tunnel cannot survive if nearby pumping drains the water table. The decline of the hidden river therefore reveals the same truth as its rise. Water technology is never only hardware. It distributes authority. The Cannet favored shared management and slow flow. The pump favored concentrated control and speed. Each system produced a different society around the same aquifer. What the underground river changed. The title called the Cannet an underground river that changed an entire civilization. The evidence supports the scale of the transformation, but not the simplicity of the claim. What is confirmed? For centuries, Cannets carried groundwater by gravity across arid parts of Iran. They supported farms, gardens, mills, reservoirs, bathhouses, and permanent settlements. They shaped cities such as Yazd and required skilled construction, maintenance, water rights, and communal institutions. Persian states expanded and administered hydraulic systems because food, revenue, settlement, and political stability depended upon water. What remains disputed? The exact place and date of the Cannet's invention. Early evidence exists in both southeastern Arabia and Iran, and researchers debate whether the system spread from one center, evolved in stages, or developed independently in more than one region. The Achaemenids may have expanded and institutionalized the technology without inventing its earliest form. What should be rejected? The idea that one king designed the entire system, that a single tunnel supplied all of Persia, or that Cannets alone explain the rise of an empire. Civilizations emerge from many interacting forces: climate, agriculture, trade, law, warfare, migration, belief, and political organization. Water connects those forces, but it does not replace them. The Cannet's most important achievement was to convert hidden geology into public life. An aquifer beneath a mountain became a stream in a village. That stream became an orchard, a tax, a marriage inheritance, a mill, a bath, a neighborhood, and a reason to repair a tunnel built by people long dead. The system also changed the meaning of the desert. Dry land was no longer judged only by the water visible on its surface. A skilled observer could read vegetation, slope, soil, and stone as signs of a river waiting underground. Engineering did not conquer the environment. It learned to work within a narrow gradient and a limited recharge. Today, the surviving Cannets stand between two interpretations. They can be admired as relics of ingenious ancestors, or studied as living warnings about groundwater. The second is more useful. A society can increase extraction faster. Then nature replaces it. It can mistake private access for collective security. It can abandon institutions that appear slow, only to discover that their slowness was part of their sustainability. The hidden rivers of Persia did not merely deliver water. They organized relationships across distance and time. Their future now depends on whether modern water systems can recover that connection without pretending the past offers a simple solution. When a shared aquifer is being depleted, should water belong primarily to the person with the deepest well, or to the community whose future depends on leaving enough underground?